first presentations this afternoon will be the Minnesota Parents Fair Share. Julie Brunner and Kathleen Sweeney will make those presentations.
Good afternoon.
My
name is Julie Brunner. On behalf of everyone involved in Minnesota Parents Fair Share, I'd like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here today. It's a great honor. Many of you think of Lake Wobegon when you think of Minnesota, where, as Garrison Keillor writes, the women are strong, the men are good looking, and the children above average. Unfortunately, in Minnesota and elsewhere, children are not leading above average lives today. What's happening in Minnesota is the same scenario that's playing out throughout the U.S. During the last 20 years, a shift in the national economy, characterized by the growth of relatively low-skill, low-wage jobs, combined with rising divorce rates and out-of-wedlock births, has dramatically decreased the ability of families to support their children. The percentage of Minnesota children living in poverty grew 21.6% between 1980 and 1990, and the proportion of children living on aid to families with dependent children in Minnesota rose by more than 15% in the last 5 years. Most children who are living on aid to families with dependent children are also living with a single custodial parent, usually their mother. Many of these custodial parents receive help through education and training programs to become employed. Helping non-custodial parents, usually fathers, solve their employment problem with the Parents Fair Share program protects the social and financial investment that is made in these children and their mothers and increases the chance the family will become independent. For years, custodial parents have complained, if only my children's father would pay his child support, my job plus support would help me get off welfare. Changes in federal law have simplified the collection of child support from persons with regular jobs by having the employer withhold support from earnings. But the so-called mystery group, those who live on no apparent income, are difficult and have remained largely untouched nationwide. Child support enforcement staff everywhere are challenged to find effective ways of dealing with these non-traditional wage earners. Staff must sort out those who have no intention of complying with a court order to pay, or those who could pay and are hiding income and assets, from individuals who have little or no work history and no prospects of employment because they lack education or job skills. For the first time, we have a program which has been effective with these individuals. The Parents Fair Share program philosophy is simple. Offer services to non-custodial parents so they can support their children both economically and emotionally. The program uses a case management approach to identify and address participants' multiple employment and parenting needs. Parents Fair Share began in Anoka County in 1987. The program design combines the power of 4 services which are already available in most communities: child support enforcement, employment and training, peer support and parent education, and mediation. In 1991, the program expanded to include Dakota County, and this month we expect Ramsey County, which is St. Paul, to join us. The Minnesota legislature is expected to expand the program next year. Studies in 1991 by the McKnight Foundation established that the average monthly child support payment rose from $51 to $111, and health insurance coverage for participants and their children increased by 36% after participation in Parents Fair Share. These outcomes are very important because these child support mystery cases are the ones that no national policy initiative or welfare reform proposal has been able to crack. The Minnesota Parents Fair Share program philosophy also includes improving parents' relationships with their kids and each other. In addition, having children grow up watching mom and dad work is the best way to pass self-sufficiency skills on to the next generation. Dozens of public officials in Minnesota endorse this program. Most important, however, are the parents and the children whose lives have been improved by the program. In the words of Mark, one of the fathers, Parents Fair Share threw me a lifeline. All at once I was a part of life again, learning how the system works and what doesn't work. I thought I knew how to get a job, but I didn't. The program helped my family learn how to work together, even though we live apart. It's good to feel like a dad again. On behalf of everyone involved in Minnesota Parents Fair Share, thank you again for the honor of being invited here today. Kathy Sweeney and I will try to answer any questions that you have.
Questions? Yes, Max?
One of the pieces of information that comes to us from the various materials we have is that there may be some who question what message this sends to custodial parents, that possibly these resources could be used for education and for employment assistance to them when they're really there trying.
I think that one of the most important things we do in this program is really support the custodial parent with this intervention, and let me tell you why I think that happens. When a custodial parent is out there doing the very best they can, and we don't in any way disparage what custodial parents have done, they've done a remarkable job already. But what this program does is really supports their efforts by allowing that one parent to have the additional support of the other parent. And children really do benefit from having two parents. There's many, many studies that we can point to that look at that. This does not in any way take away from the custodial parent, but really adds to what that parent is already doing.
Harriet?
Let me just sort of concur in the sense that there are many of us who've been concerned that the focus has been almost exclusively on the custodial parent, and most often a woman, and how can we get her back to work or to work, and not understanding that one of the best answers may be to provide some support so that the non-custodial parent can be bringing income in, and particularly because of their children. How far along down the line have you been able to follow, in other words, permanence of the change and what's happening to those families?
We, as we've noted, the planning and the thinking for this program began in Anoka County in 1987. We actually began program operations in January of 1989 in Anoka County. So we have that group of people that we began services with in 1989 to look at for the question that you're asking. The follow-up that we've been able to do with that group is through child support enforcement records. And those indicate that the changes that were made have continued to remain for those families. Now, we work with about 200 people between 1989 and 1991, so we certainly can't say conclusively by any means that this represents what could happen elsewhere, but we can say that it's a very good start. What we're also concerned about, though, is demonstrating the impact on families in terms of their ability to work together to support both their kids, their increased communication skills with one another, and those are more difficult to measure than child support enforcement paid. And we're now in a national demonstration project that's going to be able to answer those questions much more vigorously. And one of the reasons we applied for participation in that project was so that we could test our early outcomes with more vigorous kinds of tests and better answer those questions. So the preliminary look is very positive, and yet we know it's a very preliminary look.
Ellen?
You've just alluded to some of the advantages of the National Demonstration Project. Sometimes those projects come with disadvantages. Have you had to change your model in order to fit into the national scene?
Interestingly enough, the model that we're involved with has 4 components. These are the same 4 components that we started with in 1989. So we were not faced with that choice as we faced or thought about going into the national project. We looked at a national project design that we felt was basically the same thing we'd already been involved in for the last 3 years, with the additional assistance, and this has been key, of seeing how this kind of idea was working out for other providers in other cities in the U.S., and with the technical assistance that we were now able to tap into, and again, with the networking from other practitioners about how is it working for you in Memphis, how is it working for you elsewhere, and being able to draw on a set of practitioners like ourselves. When we began, we didn't really know of other people we could work with, and that meant a great deal to us. So we really were fortunate enough not to be faced with that challenge.
Yes, Margot. Last question.
What is the biggest obstacle that you've had to overcome with respect to the dads themselves?
I think that many of the fathers that we've worked with have had the sense that they've really been written off. If not written off may be too generous a term, perhaps thrown away is a better term. Actively discouraged from having a participation in their children's lives through a variety of different systematic kind of discouragements. And I think to convince people that we are really there to help them solve problems and move on, make different choices, better choices, it has remained a persistent challenge to us.
If I could just supplement, one of the things that happens to dads by the time they get referred to Parents Fair Share is that they have the deadbeat dad label has been applied to them. And when they come to the program, they're feeling terrible about themselves because these are all dads who love their kids and they can't support them because they don't have a job. And so getting these folks to sort of feel good enough about themselves to realize that we actually believe that they can get a job and support their kids really takes some time. On the other hand, by the time they leave the program, they're feeling very good about themselves, and of course that's the best factor in terms of going out and keeping a job.
Thank you.